The FDE Arbitrage Playbook. Let's begin with the core idea. The AI market is no longer bottlenecked by intelligence. It is bottlenecked by translation. Frontier models are everywhere. They are powerful, accessible, and improving quickly. But turning those models into working systems inside real companies is still painfully hard. That difficulty is where the arbitrage lives. The stack on this slide shows how value moves. It begins with macro intelligence. Then it moves through process intermediation, human-in-the-loop interfaces, and finally, last-mile execution. The market still talks as if the model layer is the prize. But the real prize is downstream, where intelligence becomes operational reality. That is why the FDE matters. A forward-deployed engineer is not just an engineer, and not just a consultant. The FDE is the human execution layer that carries frontier AI through the messy layers of enterprise reality until measurable value comes out the other side. So the question is not who has the best model. The question is who can make the model work inside a real institution. And that brings us to the failure pattern this role is solving.
The headline number is brutal. Roughly 95% of enterprise AI pilots fail to produce measurable returns. That failure is usually misunderstood. People assume it means the technology is not good enough, but that is not the real problem. The models are strong, the demos work, the prototypes can be impressive. The failure happens in the production gap. On the left side of the slide, we have the capabilities everyone celebrates: large language models, multimodal systems, RAG, agentic workflows, code generation, knowledge graphs, and low latency inference. That is the world of possibility. But in the middle, we have the world enterprises actually live in: data silos, legacy infrastructure, governance constraints, integration failures, skill shortages, regulatory pressure, and human system friction. That is where pilots go to die. They prove that something is technically possible, but they do not convert into operational value. So the important shift is this: access to frontier AI is no longer the scarce asset. The scarce asset is operational intelligence. It is the ability to understand a business process, navigate institutional constraints, redesign workflows, integrate with old systems, and get AI into production where it creates measurable ROI. Once you see that, the market response becomes much easier to understand.
This is why FDE hiring exploded. This is not just a story about companies hiring more engineers. It is the market revealing where the bottleneck has moved. From January to September of 2025, FDE postings surged dramatically, while general software engineering postings stayed comparatively flat or even declined. AI labs are not simply adding technical support, they are building deployment machines. The role definition matters. A forward-deployed engineer is a highly skilled technical operator embedded with the customer to deploy frontier AI systems. That word embedded is important. These people are not waiting behind a ticket queue. They are inside the customer environment. They are discovering what is broken. They are fixing data plumbing. They are building custom agents. They are handling edge cases. And they are turning broad executive ambition into production ROI. This is Palantir's old forward-deployed playbook, now adopted at AI market scale. But the AI version is more urgent because agents do not make the last mile simpler. They make it more complicated. The hiring surge is only the surface signal. Underneath it is a deeper structure, a stack of mismatches. The FDE opportunity is not one arbitrage. It is 4 arbitrages stacked on top of each other. The first is a talent mismatch. The market calls these people engineers or consultants, but the real profile is a hybrid operator, technical enough to build, commercial enough to listen, and entrepreneurial enough to act without clean instructions. The second is an economic mismatch. AI companies are valued like software platforms, but their enterprise growth increasingly depends on services like deployment labor. The third is a pricing mismatch. The market often prices deployment as if complexity scales in a straight line, but multi-agent systems create coordination problems that compound,
permissions, workflows, shared state, failure cascades, compliance, and change management. The fourth is a retention mismatch. The best FDEs are founder types, but founder types do not stay forever. They learn the terrain, build relationships, see the market, and often leave to start agencies, vertical AI companies, or independent deployment networks. So the thesis is simple. Market convention has diverged from ground reality, and each divergence creates an exploitable gap. The matrix on the next slide makes those gaps explicit.
This slide compresses the whole playbook into one frame. Layer 1, the convention says senior engineer. The reality says founder mode operator. The exploit is to source from talent pools that normal engineering hiring misses. Layer 2, the convention says software valuation multiple. The reality behaves much more like services revenue. The exploit is outcome-based pricing, charging for production systems and measurable business results, not for hours. Layer 3, the convention says deployment complexity scales linearly. The reality says multi-agent complexity scales exponentially. The exploit is to build a multi-agent orchestration mode before the rest of the market fully feels the pain. Layer 4, the convention says FTEs are long-term employees. The reality says the best FTEs are entrepreneurs being trained by the labs. The exploit is to become the place they land after they leave. This is not just a list of observations. It is an integrated strategy for capturing value at the moment AI leaves the demo stage and enters the enterprise distribution phase. Let's start with the first mismatch. The talent label is wrong. Layer 1, the identity label mismatch. The first mistake the market makes is semantic. It hears forward deployed engineer and overweights the word engineer. So companies recruit through engineering pipelines, coding screens, system design interviews, architecture reviews, and maybe a customer scenario at the end. But the real FDE profile is not a conventional software engineer. It is much closer to a founder operating inside someone else's company. The radar chart shows the gap. A software engineer may be excellent at structured system design. A consultant may be excellent at communication and analysis. But the FDE sits in a harder quadrant. The FDE needs ambiguity tolerance, end-to-end agency, customer diagnostic skill, technical depth, commercial judgment, and the ability to ship under imperfect conditions. The best FDE walks into a messy enterprise environment and figures out what is actually broken. Not what the sales deck promised, not what the executive sponsor thinks is broken, not what the ticket says, what is actually broken. Then they build, persuade, integrate, debug, and keep going until the system works. That is founder mode behavior wearing an engineering label. And once the label is wrong, the talent market becomes mispriced. Exploit 1, FDE talent arbitrage. The exploit is to look where the standard hiring machine is not looking. Once you understand the real role, the mispriced talent pools become obvious. Failed startup founders may not carry current prestige, but they have lived ambiguity. Agency and consultancy operators may not look like elite software engineers on paper, but they know how to ship inside client constraints. People from high-chaos operational roles may not have traditional tech polish, but they understand pressure, ownership, and imperfect information. These groups may be priced at $120,000 to $180,000 in their current markets. But the FDE market values the same operating capability at around $238,000 and up. That spread is the arbitrage. The strategic move is not just recruiting, it is building an assessment mode. Standard interviews test for clean technical answers. FDE assessment should test for ambiguity tolerance, customer diagnosis, shipping speed under constraints, stakeholder navigation, and the instinct to own outcomes. Over time, every placement creates data. Who succeeded? Who failed? Which traits mattered? Which credentials were false positives? Which backgrounds were undervalued? That data compounds into a proprietary talent identification system. The second mismatch is even bigger. The market wants to call this software, but the work behaves like services.
Layer 2, the services software valuation mismatch.
This is the uncomfortable secret underneath the AI deployment boom. AI labs are valued like software companies. The market wants scalable platforms, high margins, and revenue that compounds without proportional headcount. That is the software narrative. But enterprise AI deployment increasingly looks like professional services. FDEs embed with customers, they diagnose workflows, they integrate with legacy systems, they customize agents, they handle governance, security, compliance, and change management. That is services reality. The labs understand this, but they cannot fully admit it. If they admit they are becoming services organizations, the valuation story becomes harder. Services companies usually do not command software multiples. They scale more linearly. They depend more on people. They carry different margin expectations. So the FDE becomes a strategic compromise. It is services-led growth disguised as software enablement. The FDE absorbs enterprise complexity, creates customer success, captures deployment knowledge, and feeds that knowledge back into the product. In the best case, the services layer becomes the learning engine for future software margins. The point is not that services are bad. The point is that services may be the only way to reach the software opportunity. That opens the door to an inversion strategy.
Exploit 2. Services to software inversion. AI labs start with a software identity and get pulled towards services reality. The arbitrager can start from the opposite direction. Begin honestly as services, then climb towards software margins. That inversion is powerful because it avoids the identity trap. If you are not trying to protect a software multiple on day one, you can price and operate according to reality. The first play is outcome pricing. Do not charge by the hour. Charge for the production system shipped. Charge for the workflow automated. Charge for the investigation time reduced. Charge for the adoption metric achieved. Charge for the governed agent successfully deployed. Labs avoid this because it makes the services component visible. Consultancies avoid it because it threatens the billable hour model. A new entrant can use it precisely because there is no legacy economics to defend. The second play is conversion. Every FDE engagement produces reusable assets: integration templates, governance checklists, workflow maps, evaluation harnesses, permissioning patterns, orchestration logic, and deployment playbooks. Capture those artifacts deliberately. Codify them, standardize them, turn the repeated parts of services into software. That is the services to software path. Sell hard things manually first, then productize the patterns that repeat. The third mismatch explains why this opportunity gets more valuable as enterprises move from single agents to multiple agents.
Layer 3. The agentic complexity multiplier. The market still talks about agents as if deploying another one is just adding another unit of capability. That is wrong. Single-agent deployment is already hard. Multi-agent deployment is a different complexity class. When agents interact with each other, with legacy systems, with human workflows, and with permission boundaries, complexity does not rise in a straight line. It compounds. 3 agents are not 3 times harder than 1. They may be 5 to 10 times harder, because the difficult part is no longer just making one agent perform a task. The difficult part is coordination, shared context, conflicting permissions, handoffs, auditability, failure cascades, human review, and deciding which agent is allowed to act under which conditions. The market pricing assumption is still too linear. The actual complexity curve is bending upward. The space between those two lines, the mispricing zone, is where the opportunity lives. The best operators will price for the complexity that is coming, not the complexity buyers currently perceive. That leads to the third exploit. Build the orchestration layer before everyone else realizes they need it.
Exploit 3. Multi-agent orchestration moats. This slide shows the future enterprise AI environment. Not one clean assistant. Many agents operating across functions, systems, workflows, and data boundaries. Without orchestration, that becomes chaos. The moat is not merely building agents. The moat is governing them. That means knowing how agents share state, how permissions propagate, how decisions are logged, how failures are contained, how humans intervene,
and how compliance teams can audit what happened after the fact. It also means designing systems where agents do not silently conflict with each other or amplify each other's mistakes. The strategic actions are direct. First, price for incoming complexity, not current perception. Second, build rare expertise in cross-agent governance and failure cascade prevention. Third, arrive at the complexity wall before the market demand does. The timing matters. Enterprises are moving from experiments to production. They are moving from isolated agents to multi-agent workflows. The organizations that hit that wall first will pay for people who already know how to climb it. But the people who can climb that wall create a fourth problem for the labs that employ them.
Layer 4. The founder retention paradox. The best FDEs are exactly the hardest people to retain. Labs want high-agency, founder-type operators. They want people who tolerate ambiguity, own outcomes, persuade customers, and ship without waiting for perfect instructions. But those same traits make the best FDEs entrepreneurial. The cycle is built into the role. Labs hire founder types, then they train them. They give them access to enterprise problems, executive relationships, deployment patterns, and frontier AI tooling. But at the same time, they limit autonomy and upside because the FDE is still an employee inside a larger strategy. Eventually, the strongest people leave. They start agencies, vertical AI companies, or independent deployment practices. The lab is left with a weaker retained average, people good enough to stay, but not always the founder mode operators who made the model work in the first place. That is the paradox. The role teaches people how to build the next layer of the market. So the fourth exploit is not to fight the labs for talent. It is to harvest the talent they inevitably produce. Exploit 4. The talent harvest strategy. The strategic posture here is simple. Do not compete head-to-head with AI labs for FDE hiring. Let the labs train the market. Then become the destination for the people who leave. Exiting AI lab FDEs bring rare assets with them. They have real customer scars. They know what deployments actually require. They have credibility with enterprises. And they understand firsthand where model vendors fall short. A platform that organizes these people can become much more than a staffing network. It can become an alliance of elite deployment operators. But the engagement model has to match the temperament. Founder-type FDEs do not want to be boxed into a narrow services role. They want autonomy, client choice, model-agnostic freedom, outcome-based compensation, and upside participation in the systems they help create. That is the key. Solve the retention problem by mirroring the founder temperament instead of suppressing it. When all four exploits reinforce each other, the strategy becomes a flywheel. The synthesis flywheel. The 4 layers are not independent plays. They compound. Talent identification feeds the retention harvest. If you know how to spot founder-type FDEs early, you are better positioned to recruit the best ones when they leave the labs. The retention harvest feeds talent identification. The career data from ex-lab FDEs becomes ground truth. What backgrounds worked, what traits mattered, and which signals were misleading. Multi-agent orchestration feeds outcome pricing. You cannot credibly charge for outcomes unless you can reliably deliver complex production systems. And outcome pricing reinforces the orchestration moat. The more you price around production value, the more the market understands that deployment capability is not a commodity. This is the compounding edge. Better talent creates better deployments. Better deployments create better pricing power. Better pricing funds deeper capability. And deeper capability attracts better talent. But sequencing matters. You do not build the whole flywheel at once. Execution sequencing, months 0 to 12. The first 12 months should unfold in 3 phases. Months 0 to 3 are about capability. Activate Layer 1 and Layer 3 first, talent identification and multi-agent orchestration. These are the lowest capital moves and the fastest ways to create differentiated signal. Build the assessment model, build the technical point of view. Prove that you understand the real deployment bottleneck. Months 3 to 6 are about relationships.
Use early market signaling to begin the Layer 4 harvest. Start mapping FDE talent, ex-founder operators, AI lab alumni, agency builders, and enterprise buyers who already feel the production gap. Months 6 to 12 are about convergence. This is when Layer 2 comes online, outcome-based pricing. By this point, you should have enough talent access and technical capability to sell against measurable production outcomes instead of generic consulting inputs. The discipline is sequencing. Do not start with the grand platform story. Start with proof of capability. Then convert capability into network. Then convert network into pricing power. There are two traps that can ruin this strategy before it compounds.
Practitioner traps. The first trap is founder LARP. The discourse around FDEs can sound glamorous. Founder mode, high agency, customer chaos, special operations for AI. But liking that identity is not the same as having the capability. The real test is harsh. Have you personally shipped a production system inside a messy customer environment where the requirements were ambiguous, the data was broken, the stakeholders disagreed, and the timeline was unreasonable? If not, you may be studying the role, but you are not yet operating at the level it demands. The second trap is services stigma. The tech ecosystem has a deep bias that software is noble and services are somehow inferior. That bias is dangerous here. The money may be in services first. The moat may be in services first. The software product may only become obvious after enough services repetitions reveal what can be standardized. Do not import the AI lab's identity problem into your own strategy. They may need to pretend they are pure software companies. You do not. That brings us to the final point. The window is open because the market is changing phases right now.
The window for arbitrage is open. The AI market is entering its enterprise distribution phase. The first phase was model capability. The second phase was experimentation. The current phase is deployment. This is where AI has to enter the systems of record, the workflows, the permissions, the compliance environments, and the human routines where work actually happens. Value is shifting away from generic model access and toward custom-built production agents. And the ultimate moat is not just the model. It is human capability embedded in the system of record. It is the people and practices that can make AI survive contact with real companies. That is why the FDE surge matters. It is not a hiring fad. It is the labor market signal of a deeper transition. The hardest problem in AI is no longer making the model impressive. It is making the model useful inside institutions that were not designed for it. The opportunity is to exploit the convention and deliver the reality. The market is still pricing the future as if software alone will win. But the winning operators will understand something more precise. AI value is captured in the last mile, where intelligence becomes work.